Everybody get ready. All right. All right, everybody, I'll just start getting into the introductions, just so if people have questions, they can start asking. I'm Byron Chen, host of Success Vets, resource site for transitioning veterans. Scott, you want to jump in with what you do?
Sure. So I'm Scott Fuzzle, founder and host of Command Your Business, focused on military veteran entrepreneurship, but also for the last 17 years, I've been working in the corporate world after I transitioned out of the Army and kind of marrying the two of those together and hoping to help vets out there.
Awesome. And then our special guest today is Amanda. Amanda is the founder of Miligistix. Amanda, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda. Byron, thanks so much for having me this evening. As Byron mentioned, I'm the founder of Miligistix. We're a boutique consulting firm that focuses on helping companies learn how to establish military recruiting programs. The goal is to ultimately have them be self-sufficient so that they don't need people like me and they can do their own internal recruiting efforts so that they can maximize impact and minimize cost. And on the veteran side, I also coach veterans who are in transition and just recently launched Women Veterans on Wall Street, which is a subcommittee of Veterans on Wall Street. So if there's anyone on today's call that's a woman veteran that's interested in finance, specifically, you can get in touch with me, and I'm happy to connect you to some recruiters on Wall Street.
I'm sorry, yes, my dog is barking a little bit in the background.
I think he's a special guest.
Yeah. Let's take him away. But Amanda, thanks so much for coming on the show. You've been on the podcast before, and you talked about working with certain companies. We'll definitely jump into that today. You've also talked about it from the perspective of a military veteran, what they should be looking at when they leave and jump into their corporate careers. So for anybody in the audience, Amanda's got a wealth of information. I think Scott and I are probably going to sit back and ask a lot of questions today, and let the questions come from the audience, because there's just a wealth of information coming from you. But I wanted to ask, how's the company going, and anything you want to update us on about it?
Everything's going well. Like I just mentioned, me and 4 other co-founders just started Women Veterans on Wall Street. So that's something that was near and dear to my heart that I've kind of had my sights set on for a while, being involved with Veterans on Wall Street. So that's one thing that we're working on right now. Another one is I'm crossing my fingers. I might have a speaking engagement coming up in October at a very well-known talent, let's call it a talent consortium. I don't want to reveal the details right now, but hopefully I'll have a fairly large speaking engagement in October so that I can broadcast more of my expertise, both on the recruiting side, but also on the transitioning service member side as well.
Awesome.
Just having fun here on the New Jersey-New York border. Most of my clients are still on the Wall Street side, but hoping to expand across the U.S.
Okay. Well, I think a good way to get started would just to be ask you how you got started in this, because you're not a veteran yourself, but you're very involved in veterans causes, and you had actually done this as a consultant for a little while. Could you talk about that? Did you hear that last question, Amanda?
Yeah, sure. I think I just lost audio. Are you guys still there? Yes, I did. Okay. So you're right. I'm not a veteran. I do come from somewhat of a military family. A couple of uncles and cousins all serve. And just a really quick short story. I was supposed to actually play volleyball for the Coast Guard Academy. And I took a left turn, decided to go to a small state school in Virginia instead. And it's just really funny how it's kind of all come full circle. And back in 2013, I was working for a leadership development and employee engagement consulting firm. And one of the projects I worked on with that company was with Amazon operations, understanding why their military professionals in their operations warehouses were leaving at higher rates than their civilian managers. And this was a research firm, so we conducted a lot of first-person interviews and focus groups, understanding directly from the source why those individuals felt like they had to leave in order to regain whatever it is that they were missing. And there was a couple of really interesting facts that came from that research, one of them being culture and one of them being just general career fit. And I think that's one of the themes that we want to focus on today is when you find your job or your career after the military, make sure you do a lot of due diligence, not only externally, but internally as well. Have those really great coaching conversations with yourself. Be honest with yourself. What are the job conditions that you're willing to put up with? Will you travel an hour each way or even 2 hours like I did for a while? That was rough, but I did it. And you also have to think about, are your salary expectations realistic? If you put your entire package together from what you got in the military, is that really going to equal what you're getting in the civilian world? So we looked at all of that data across those veterans who were at Amazon. And that's really what gave myself the entree into the military talent world. And I recently just wrapped up an 18-month consulting assignment with a private equity firm in Manhattan. And now in March,
I think that's a good point on the salary expectations. I heard, and I can't remember who said this comment, but it really struck a nerve with me. It's, you think about many of the people that are listening now that have served. Many people have spent 20 years plus. I know certainly Corey spent 20 years plus serving in the Air Force. Dan Evans online right now, spent a significant amount of time in the Marine Corps. And, thinking about a senior leader in the military or a battalion commander, a colonel commanding a brigade, and all the experiences that it took to get to that point. And someone, I remember the comment was like, well, think about a Fortune 500 senior leader, senior level, at some point as a senior leader who's done 20 years running this Fortune 500 organization or got to the point where they've led this organization and just think about, well, hey, I've led this Fortune 500 organization. I've spent all this time learning how to sell XYZ, these widgets. Sure, I can come and run a Marine infantry battalion because I have all of this, significant leadership experience. I've been leading a major organization. Well, that, you would laugh at that. You would laugh at someone who would come in and even though they have years of, business experience, leadership experience, but there's no way that they could step right in from day one and come in and do those same things that 06 could do. Even though, hey, they may have some similar leadership skills, similar backgrounds, and but there's no way that the things that they've learned in those 20 years in the Marine Corps, in the Air Force, in the Army, to get to that level. Same thing kind of applies that I've heard to the civilian world. You can't necessarily expect to, even though you have significant leadership skills and are going to be and have a much faster career trajectory than some people. It may not always kind of go from the point you were when you left the military to to where you think you should be in the civilian world. That just struck a chord with me, thinking of a civilian CEO. There's no way in the world you could expect them to come and walk in and lead a Marine infantry battalion, and vice versa. You can't come from leading a Marine infantry battalion and go expect to run a Fortune 500 organization. That's not to say that you can't go into that organization and very rapidly learn culture, learn the language, learn how you fit, and very quickly move up the ranks. But to expect to kind of go in and be at the very top of the organization, I think there's, in many cases that's not always going to be the case. And I don't know what you found, Amanda, as you're starting to look at this, but
yeah, I echo everything you're saying. And quite honestly, I'd say 95% of the people I coach, and it's just ironic that they all come to me, are senior officers preparing for their transition and senior enlisted.
Do you find that they're easier or harder to work with? I just wonder. You can tell us. Nobody's going to tell.
I don't think it's necessarily easier or harder. It's just different. Okay. And I think generally it's more difficult for senior folks to find the jobs that they think that they're qualified for. And
Well, just to follow along with that, I think that I felt when I was leaving the military, I think I assumed or overestimated my skills and how they would transfer onto the civilian side, and that was my fault. But I also think nobody really sat me down and helped me honestly assess what I was going to be able to transfer into a new role, even if I had a lot of experience or felt like I was going to be able to pick it up quickly. There's definitely a learning curve, right. And I didn't prepare myself well, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a couple good. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that, like I said, it's not easier or harder. It's just different. So when you work with the senior folks from a coaching perspective, it's really managing expectations. And like you were saying, Scott, that you can't just go into a business and become the COO or CHRO, the Chief Human Resource Officer, even though you've led a battalion of thousands of people multiple times. Those are great skills, but you still need some of that industry expertise and knowledge before you move up the ranks.
Well, I think Corey made a very good comment in here. On the flip side, don't buy into the mantra that you have to start at the bottom either. I mean, there's certainly, you're not, depending on where that you've been, absolutely. There are a huge amount of transferable skill sets that are going to put you well ahead of, everything I've seen, ahead of people that are just starting out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the other side of the coin, I worked with a gentleman who spent 25 years in the Army, and he was a non-commissioned officer. And when he got out, he was working for practically minimum wage in a warehouse job. And this gentleman saw multiple combat tours, a phenomenal individual. The problem was he didn't know how to translate what he did in the military to recruiters. And once he learned how to do that, he also learned how to connect with recruiters. And that's often the hardest part. And it's people like us who are on the call today that can make those connections. The minute you have a door open for you, it's a lot easier to get your foot in the door rather than having to kick down the door. So the more that we can all come together, the ones who have connections to recruiting and talent acquisition professionals, the easier it will become for qualified veterans to get those jobs.
Yeah, so I'm starting to see a few questions coming in that I think relate to what you just said, Amanda. Maybe I'd start off with, I think a couple of them relate to, translating those jobs, because we have retired lieutenant colonel here who mentioned something about, having trouble getting bites for jobs. And then on the flip side, it seems like Nick mentioned the general public seems to give officers a lot more clout than the enlisted. And honestly, I think I agree with that. I mean, I could see it in talent acquisition. But I'm wondering for you, if you're working with companies looking to hire veterans, and from their perspective, does it matter, how much experience or what rank you were coming out of the military?
Not so much rank. It's really how you did your job in the military. So what was your job and how did you do it? Was it a technical?
So even, I'm wondering, even if you were a lieutenant colonel or you were a corporal when you get out, if you word your resume correctly and you have the right experience, you think like they could compete against each other for a job?
So let me just take a quick back step. Real life situation. I'm working with a lieutenant colonel right now in the Army Reserve, and he has 15 years of finance experience. You would think that his 15 years of finance experience would be a shoo-in in terms of getting a job specifically on Wall Street when they have veterans on Wall Street. But the problem was there's still a disconnect between what recruiters understand from, the civilian recruiter's perspective of the military, especially military jargon, acronyms, MOSs, ranks, insignias, what I like to call military 101. Now, this gentleman still had the fact that he was a lieutenant colonel prominently displayed in his resume. Well, civilians don't understand what a lieutenant colonel is or does in the military. But if you directly translate that to managing director, especially in a finance firm, they know exactly what a managing director does and who and what they're responsible for in that capacity. So if you can find the direct equivalent of the title of the job you're applying for and how you can translate your rank, whether you're enlisted or an officer, the better off you'll be when it comes time to submitting your resume and having a conversation with a recruiter.
Okay. And so actually, Scott, just real quick, how's your audio coming in? I just
still
want to check it real quick.
Still good here.
Okay. I'll just let people, we'll see if people reply. So Amanda, that's interesting to me that, like, you know, if you're one good way to translate your background is not so much your rank, but the equivalent position on the civilian side or in the corporate world. But I remember for me, like, that was really difficult to figure out because I'm like, well, you know, I manage this many people and it seems like a lot. So I guess I can translate it one way. But on the other hand, if it wasn't equivalent, like I wasn't a CEO, for a private company. So, that number of people. Yeah. So that many people. So I wonder, my opinion is you have to use it to your advantage, really. Like if there's a position out there, what I've always found in my military background is there's a lot of things that I could kind of like cobble together and it would fit for a position that I was going for on the corporate side. So what I would do is just look up those jobs and like whatever the consistent position was, that's what I would put on my resume, or that's how I would speak about my job when I was in an interview. And I wouldn't try to exaggerate. I mean, if I couldn't convince people I was a CEO, if I couldn't speak to that, then of course I wouldn't say that. But a director or manager or something like that, I think usually made sense.
Well,
do you think that's okay, or do you think we're getting into a gray area?
Go ahead,
for
Scott.
doing that?
Well, I think, this can apply to, to someone else's point earlier about, the difference between officers and civilians. If you can translate that, here's what I led and managed 150 soldiers. I did X, Y, and Z, but and I think, just jumping on Byron's point as well, is making it for the position. If you write down and you say, regardless of whether you were an officer or enlisted, I led and managed 150 soldiers, Marines, airmen, but the job is for an analyst. Well, they don't necessarily care about the job that, Byron said, tailoring it to the job you're looking for. They're not looking for your leadership skills in this particular role. They're looking for your analytical ability. So you want to highlight the things that you did from an analyzing standpoint, how you analyzed information and some of those things you did there. So I think that is very critical, as well as making sure that you translate what is doing the intel. And I think Corey made a comment earlier, understanding what it is you're going for and understanding kind of the quote unquote battlefield. What is that job? What are the job requirements? What are the key skill sets they're looking for?
Right. Can I just answer something Patrick just brought up? So he said achievement bullets under job title, quantifiable or critical. But even with the callbacks, except for the seasonal call center thing. So a couple of points. Yes, you definitely need to quantify the work that you've done. So if there's no numbers or figures or facts associated with a job title or a role that you've held in the military, or if you are in the Guard or Reserve, your job outside of the military, you need to add numbers. Even if you have to make an accurate assessment or a guess of how many millions of dollars of equipment you've managed. If you don't have a complete 100% accurate figure, try to use at least an estimate, because what that does is it helps recruiters say, okay, this person has managed 10 people for 3 years and they've had budgets anywhere from $8 million to $18 million. I can see him or her fitting in this role really well. Now, in terms of not getting callbacks, you're probably not executing your search correctly. And if you're not using LinkedIn to connect directly to recruiters and directors of talent acquisition at your target companies, that's step one. And it's actually really easy to do. But what I would recommend before that, and I think, Byron, we actually talked about this on our podcast, was you need to connect with fellow veterans, transitioning service members, if they're in the Guard or Reserve, retirees, military spouses at your target companies. Once you start making an inroads into those target companies by finding your allies, then you're going to be able to get to recruiting staff directly. And that's really important. So if you're just submitting 100 applications and not getting any callbacks, it's because your execution is incorrect.
Yeah, and that's a tough one, I think, because it's just easier to send out resumes than I think we're trying to reach out to people. Because when you're reaching out to people directly, you're not telling them you're going to send a resume. You're trying to say, hey, can we connect on LinkedIn? And I felt like it's a lot easier. It's a lot harder to accept a no when they like won't respond or say no, I won't connect with you. But it ends up being more effective, I think, in the long term, is to find the people in those companies. And I think that you had mentioned before, Amanda, that just about any major, this really applies to major companies, but even small companies probably as well, have veterans in their workforce, and that's who you actually go after first to establish a veteran, hiring and retention program within a company. And so, those are probably your best sources to get your foot in the door. Before we move on, though, I think there have been a couple questions about executive search firms, and you talked about recruiters, but it sounded like you were talking about recruiters on the company side, like if a company specifically hired or had their own team set up to recruit veterans. Any recommendations or any thoughts on the other side for the companies that specifically do that? I'm thinking for Patrick, who asked, I'm thinking of like Cameron Brooks or Lucas Group or Ryan, companies like that.
Yeah, so those three are definitely good. You have Orion International, Cameron Brooks, Lucas Group, Alliance Careers. These are all junior military officer recruiting firms. Some of them focus on technical talent as well, so NCOs and enlisted. The other thing too is you can look at Hiring Our Heroes transition summits if you're transitioning out. I would highly recommend looking at the larger hiring fairs that happen, because with those transition summits through Hiring Our Heroes, you can, walk up to recruiters and have conversations with them, and you're likely going to hear, apply for your job on our website. And it's frustrating, but at least you have that person's contact information. And then that's when you go back to LinkedIn and start making those connections and just saying, hey, I loved meeting you at Joint Base Lewis McChord, and I would love to have a conversation either with yourself or some veterans who are currently employees to learn more about your culture. Really just start engaging in dialogue. Don't just start shooting your resumes out to these recruiters that you meet. Now, in terms of executive search firms, there are other executive search firms that are civilian search firms that also do some military recruiting as well. So you're going to look at a lot of the larger firms, like Korn Ferry is one of them, KORN, ferry as in like the boat ride ferry. And I know that there's some New York City-based recruiting firms specifically that are starting to kind of dabble in military talent recruiting. Quite honestly, I think the model is skewed a little bit. It's really expensive for companies to engage with executive search firms, especially for large numbers of placements. So you kind of have to put the impetus on yourself to drive your own career. And I've honestly had a lot more success coaching veterans to utilize LinkedIn and to make direct connections than they'll ever have using a JMO recruiting firm, just because they're really driving their own career rather than putting their career in somebody else's hand.
Yeah, and I think to go along with it, man, I mean, those are skills that that once you learn, you can apply throughout your career. Like, hopefully you won't have to consistently go back to a recruiting firm. But for Patrick, I just wanted to say, companies like Cameron Brooks and Lucas Group, they do actually work with senior military, that's senior enlisted as well as officers. I don't think they market it as much to them. But for example, I remember at my career conference, we had I believe a colonel, a lieutenant colonel, who was with the rest within our group. It's just not a group that they target, I think, when they go and speak at different bases, because that there's just not that as many of them getting out. But they will work with senior folks as well. They're just, all their marketing is just towards probably more junior enlisted and junior officers. So I think it's still worth checking with those executive search firms if that's the route that you're going to go. But I think Amanda makes a good point that you're also better off, working on that on the side.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and think about your peers that have, a couple of 2-3 year groups ahead of you. In your case, if you're retired, you're lieutenant colonel, all the people that you went to, the Command and General Staff College with, all the different people you went to Cast Cube with. Think about all of those different people that have transitioned out ahead of you. Huge resource. Go back and look at those roles and don't go, in my opinion, just going back to the LinkedIn piece. Don't just use the generic, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, Amanda, but just the generic, hey, I'd like to connect on LinkedIn. Every single one of those, you need to go in and get personal. Hey, Joe, I don't even remember when we went to, we were stationed at Fort Benning together and in 94. Love to catch up. Love to learn more about what you're doing now and how I can help you in your transition, and not not going into it. Hey, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. I need a job, and can you get me hired at your firm? I'd love to.
Yes, the number one snafu of connecting with people on LinkedIn is just hitting connect. Yeah. Now on your cell phone, you actually have the ability to customize your connection message. I could actually show you on my cell phone, but there's a little 3-dot vertical button in the top right-hand corner when you click on somebody's profile in the connection area. When you click on their profile, and it allows you to customize the message. You used to not be able to customize a message from your phone, and I actually recommended people don't connect with folks via cell phone, but actually sign on to a computer, but you can actually do it now. So one of the best ways to connect with people and get a response from them is to ensure that you have a second-degree connection. So before you reach out to that individual, look at who you're connected with in that other person's network. So for example, this afternoon, Scott, you and I weren't connected on LinkedIn. So I saw that Byron was you were a second degree connection of mine. Byron and I obviously are already connected. So I said something along the lines of, Scott, I'm looking forward to the event tonight. And if you didn't know I was going to connect with you, I would have said, Byron is a mutual connection of ours. Would love to talk to you about your involvement in the military space. So open a dialogue. Don't just say, I'd love to connect with you to give you my resume.
I'd also like to give a quick story about a friend of mine who's a Navy veteran, has a background in engineering, but really wants to get into tech in the startup world. And his process, he's been avoiding the executive search firms just because there aren't that many that are targeted to getting veterans into tech companies, startups like companies like Facebook or Uber or even much earlier level startups. So what he's been doing is he went online, he found a list of 100 or so companies from AngelList, which is a list of just a bunch of companies that have received funding. And he's broken down that list in a huge spreadsheet into skills that he could bring, positions that they're hiring for, and also veterans at that company that he could find on LinkedIn. And this is all before even reaching out to anybody. So he's breaking down, figuring out ways that he can fit in, where he can, get his foot in the door and things like that. His next step wasn't even to reach out to the companies. He actually found a conference where a lot of those companies are going to be going to, and it's a really expensive conference. But there was a way where he could get a free ticket if he shared if he got enough people to sign up on the email list. So we went about it that way, and he's going to go there and start to those companies about the skills that he has and bring in a resume. So I think that using an executive search firm makes that process a lot easier, but it's a lot less targeted. You don't get to choose which companies are going to be showing up and looking for veterans. So that's just another approach to go about it, Patrick, but it's still pretty tough. I'm hoping that's hitting your questions, and it looks like Amanda's connected with you on the side if you wanted to chat more on the side. And I definitely want to hit another question that I saw. Oh, sorry, Scott, go ahead.
I just want to hit one and just remind everyone, if you haven't done so, you can get a year, and I just put the link in there, veterans.linkedin.com. But you can get a year of the premium LinkedIn, which allows you some additional functionality within LinkedIn, being a veteran. If you go to veterans.linkedin.com, and actually someone who Byron and I both have interviewed is now kind of running the LinkedIn Veterans Program. Greg Call, who's a Marine Corps veteran, he's now their Veterans Program Manager. So it's another great great person to know. But that is a great resource as well to kind of give you some of the additional functionality and maybe even and you don't want to make this a completely a LinkedIn thing, but
my LinkedIn counterparts are probably loving me right now. Free publicity. Yeah, everything you're saying is accurate, and veterans.linkedin.com is definitely a great area for anyone who's transitioning out or who has transitioned and just has never taken advantage of it. It gives you access to InMail, but I don't even think InMail is even that important anymore as long as you customize your connection request. It does allow you, though, to see everyone who's viewing your profile. And one of the best things you can do is at least weekly go through who's viewed your profile. And if there's somebody that viewed your profile that you're interested in connecting with, just reach out to them and try the whole second-degree connection thing that I mentioned before.
I also find that InMail was helpful. I used it for that year because it allows you to send a longer message. So if you just connect with somebody, yes. I think you have like 90 characters, which is really tough to fit in more than 2 sentences, which sometimes you need.
Yeah, until you're connected with them.
And with InMail, you can connect with people. It goes straight into their email. I mean, there are some people that don't check LinkedIn very much. So your message goes straight to their email. And one other advantage is I think you can connect with anybody, which for some people on LinkedIn, I think either their profiles are hidden or they're not. They don't allow people that don't know them to connect. So that's another advantage that InMail is using. Plus, it's free for a year, so it's worth checking out. And so, Amanda, one of the other questions I wanted to hit, and I think this one comes up a lot for people in the military that are in occupational specialties that don't have a very obvious transfer. So somebody in the audience mentioned here, seems like it's really tough for infantry guys to make that jump. I was wondering, for somebody who's coming with, I think the problem essentially breaks down into, hey, my background was this, and I'm trying to break into something totally different. I know I have skills that fit into that, but I have to somehow translate that for somebody else. Any thoughts on somebody going from infantry to any position in the corporate world?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, did you hear the last part of that question?
I have a great anecdotal story. Okay. So the CFO of private equity for Apollo Global Management.
I'm still here. I think
we just lost somebody. Am I still live?
You're still live, still good.
Okay, we just lost Byron.
Yes.
He'll come back. So the CFO of private equity for Apollo Global Management, the firm that I worked for the last 18 months, is Jim Crossan. Jim Crossan is a former Marine, and he was enlisted. He was not an officer. He spent maybe 4 or 5, possibly 6 years in the Marine Corps, and he is now the CFO of a very large multinational finance firm. And the reason why I tell you that is because your MOS does not need to depict your future. So if you don't want to go into security, or if you don't want to go into, transportation, if you were a truck driver, 88 Mike in the Army, then you don't have to. And if you have the foundational skills of management or leadership or problem solving, everything that comes along with infantry roles, as long as you focus your career search through either your education or through internships, you can kind of direct your own career path into a different area. You don't have to just go into a police force. You can actually go into finance if you're interested in finance. So don't let your MOS depict what you do in your civilian career if that's not something that you're interested in.
And that's something as well. I came out. I was an armor officer, so I was a combat arms officer as well. Wasn't a lot of market for that, but certainly, and even as I've been on the hiring side as well, as I look at something like that, an infantryman, in most MOSs, it's really I'm looking for someone who can solve a problem. certainly they have, there's leadership skills, there's the being able to react in pressure situations, be able to effectively communicate and get a task done and figure things out, which I think is so many, all of the MOS is really, but something that doesn't translate at all, like infantry for say, is a perfect, perfect thing that I look for. Just, hey, problem solving skills, communication skills, able to react and lead and manage a diverse group of individuals to get something done. So that's for me, that's a huge asset that anyone, if you can speak to solving that hiring manager's problems, and how you've done that and how the problems that they may have today. I mean, certainly if you can lead and combat infantry unit in Iraq, Afghanistan.
I'll say, so my background in the Marine Corps, I was a military police officer, and it wasn't my choice when I was in the Marine Corps, and it wasn't what I wanted to do when I left the Marine Corps. And so my resume had nothing to do with any law enforcement background, and ended up transitioning into a medical sales job. But I was also interviewing for project management. I was also interviewing for production supervisors at manufacturing plants. I had a couple of random ones for retail, like Google, when Google was about to open up some retail stores. And so, one of the things I had to let go was just the fact that, hey, I'm not a military police officer anymore. What is it that I want to be next? And that's what made it to my resume. Not some of the things I was more proud of, potentially when I was leaving the military, but stuff that was going to be helpful for my job search. And I'm seeing a few questions on the side about different groups and things to reach out to, whether or not they're worthwhile. I just wanted to add to that I think the biggest thing is for people to ask for help. One of the problem with all those groups is that there's so many people in it posting stuff. And honestly, I post stuff because, I want to get people, for example, onto this live chat. But the people that I've found who've gotten the most help are the ones that continually ask, hey, I'm looking to do this. This is what I've done. What am I missing? Or can anybody help me with, this, make a connection or things like that. Because people, what usually happens is it's not a huge request. It's like somebody asking for a connection or something like that. People will jump in and say, yeah, I've got something. It takes them 10 minutes out of their day, but you kind of have to be top of mind. If you just join the groups and think if you post something that people can figure out what your problem is and will help you out, I think that just doesn't happen very often. So, continually ask questions and be very specific with the questions that you ask. And then one more group that I recommend is American Corporate Partners. It's a mentorship program for veterans. I've heard good and bad things. My experience was good, but they also have a forum where you can ask questions, and I find that people are pretty helpful on that.
One thing I want to say is every time I post the link, it keeps getting a smiley face instead. So I'm not sure why that's happening. So anyway, yes, American Corporate Partners is great. And there's also another organization that I'm going to selfishly plug right now. And it's a wonderful nonprofit that I'm actually on the advisory board for called Stand Beside Them. StandBesideThem.org is a coaching platform that provides certified professional coaching for veterans all across the U.S., both transitioning, those who are veterans, military spouses, members of the Guard and Reserve. The only caveat is you have to be post 9/11. So if you're looking for life coaching, career coaching, relationship coaching, just general coaching, these are all certified professionals. I'm actually a certified professional coach, so I'm on their cadre right now. I've put the link over there,
awesome,
standbesideThem.org.
Can you say that again? I'm going to spell it out in the corner so people can get it. The link was
standbesideThem.org.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. So I see a lot of people
Thank you.
Calling in or asking questions. If it's easier for people, if you put /Q before your question, it puts it into a queue for us so we can go down the line. Because as the conversations get added, I'm going back and trying to catch up and make sure I don't miss anything. But unfortunately, I'm probably missing some. So if we didn't get to your question, go ahead and ask it again, just so it keeps popping up in the feed. Or use /Q, because then it comes up in the side. Let me give you a quick example.
And also from a talking from a networking standpoint, the people that are on this call, not only Byron, myself and Amanda, but also all of the people that are up there above you. There are certainly some great veterans on here. Corey Chrisman, a lot of you, Jennifer, a lot of the other people that also do work for veterans and have a lot of Nick. Make sure and follow them on Blab, and then go and look them up after this as well, because there are some great people on this call outside of here, and the comments in here have been great.
Amanda, one thing I wanted to ask, because I thought this was a really good story and really enlightening when you came on the show, is what's the perspective from the company side? Like when they say, hey, I want to hire veterans, why do they want to do that? Is it for publicity, things like that? And also, what are some of the challenges that you face as you've gotten these companies sort of onboarded into a veteran hiring program?
Sure. So there's definitely companies that say they're hiring veterans and they're not. So you'll very quickly be able to discern which companies are military friendly or veteran friendly. Those whose heart is in the right place, that aren't necessarily trying to say they're hiring veterans on a billboard or going to military career fairs. Not that those are bad things. Marketing is certainly a way to get your brand out there and get recognized in the veterans and military space. But there's some phenomenal companies out there that a lot of veterans, military spouses, caregivers just have not heard about. And one of the best ways to find them is actually to look through different sources like militaryfriendly.com, looking at all the ratings to see who's been designated as a different type of, they've received a different type of designation. There's another one, I'm blanking on it right now besides military friendly, but somebody in the panel on the right-hand side had mentioned to go to the Veteran Jobs Coalition, formerly 100,000 Jobs Mission website, and you'll be able to see the partners who are corporate sponsors or corporate partners of that coalition. There's over 250 of them now. Most of those 250 companies have at least a dedicated recruiter that looks at military resumes as they come in. There's definitely different degrees of success with those types of programs. And I often have conversations with corporate clients and say, show me what you're doing. Let's take a look at everything from the ground up. And a lot of times, unfortunately, a lot of their program is fluff. And we have to cut the fluff and we have to get down to business. And sometimes it's hard in the beginning because they think that showing up to a career fair will just check the box. Well, it doesn't. So they really have to think about their strategy and how military talent can fix some of their talent gaps within their organization. And then get specific. Look at your veterans within your workforce and your military spouses and your caregivers and your Guard and reservists. Those become the greatest allies to companies who hire more veterans.
Awesome. I was also wondering. Oh, sorry, Scott, go ahead.
Couldn't agree more. No, I was just agreeing 100%.
I'm trying to catch up with all the chatting on the side as well. Yeah,
there's a lot going on.
I'm trying to multitask. And I find that really interesting that different companies are different at different points along the timeline of like how prepared they are to hire a veteran. Some see the value and they hire you, Melissa, or they bring you on to help them figure out. And some think they've got it figured out and are marketing it and things like that. And so the assumption from my end when I was transitioning was like, everybody's ready to receive me, like ready to take me on as an employee. When that's not really true. All these different companies are some are very experienced with it and some are not. So your experience may vary and it just depends on who you're connecting with. But once again, I think a good way to see like through all that is to connect with somebody who's working at that company or who has worked at that company, especially a veteran, and ask them, hey, is it, if I come on as a veteran, what do you think? One good example for when I was getting out, Amazon was hiring a lot of veterans, but the feedback that I was getting, people were telling me was that Amazon is not a company that you want to work for as a veteran. Hours are terrible. They promise one thing, and it's going to be a lot more cutthroat than you expect. Your managers aren't great, and that's just what I heard at the time. This was like mid 2013. I think it's changed quite a bit. I'm starting to hear a lot more good things. Amanda, I'm assuming that's because you worked with them for a little bit, but things like that, was important for me to do the homework.
Yes, I would like to say that's the reason.
But yeah, it's all about that due diligence and making sure that their veteran hiring campaign isn't just a marketing campaign. And Corey talks about it as well. And I know Corey's doing some work in how to retain veterans is, are they, digging deeper, and are they doing it for the right reasons? Do they truly want to hire veterans and bring them in for the value that they're going to bring to the company? Or are they trying to reach a marketing campaign to say we hired some veterans and we're not, we don't necessarily care about how long they stay around. We just hired X number of veterans, making sure there's the right reasons. And there's certainly companies that are doing it for the right reasons, but you need to make sure that you're not looking at one of the ones that maybe is just doing it to do some kind of marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to put a plug in here for Verizon, but Evan Guzman over at Verizon has done amazing work with their veterans hiring program. He's become a good friend of mine, and I love what he's done. He's a civilian himself, and it doesn't take a military background to hire military veterans. You just have to kind of know how to do it well. And just like on the veteran side, you have to know how to connect with the companies that hire veterans. So anyone who's on the call that's struggling with finding a job, you can tell Evan that I told you to get in touch with him. And Verizon's always looking for great military talent. Guzman, Guzman.
No, that'd be great.
He's gonna kill me. Right. But yes, he's a great guy. You can connect with him on LinkedIn.
And, I just wanted to get to a couple questions that I see from CD Sculo. I hope I messed up your name there, but he had asked, how does my business partner, who is a vet, promote his company to veterans? And his second question also related to that, veterans that are interested in entrepreneurship, basically. Any programs that you guys have run into, Scott or Amanda, going off that? I mean, Scott's got the Command Your Business podcast. I think that's a great resource for one.
Yes. Yeah, certainly just listening to go to commandyourbusiness.com and check out some of the veteran entrepreneurs that I've interviewed. Corey's got a great resource, what they're doing out of Syracuse University, ivmf.org. Got a lot of great boot camps out there, a lot of great transition programs. Certainly a lot of other resources out there, but just want to make sure and highlight, if anyone wants to relocate to PA, connect with Jennifer Roseman here. I know she runs some programs as well. So make sure you connect with Jennifer, who is on this podcast. So she's got openings that she's currently looking for in Pennsylvania. So and she's hiring. So if you see Jennifer put how people can connect with you in the comments here as well. But connect with her here on Blab and offline as well. So we're making Stanford Ignite as well. But make sure you connect with Jennifer Roseman.
Yeah, for the audience, thanks so much for participating and throwing up all these resources and also bearing with us as some of we work with through some connectivity issues. But this has been great for people that are worried that they're missing anything. Just to let them know, the recording for this does show up usually a couple days afterwards. So if you come back to the same link, if you're trying to get the resources or you want to jot something down and take notes, revisit this and you'll be able to find it. Also, we'll be putting up a link to let you know, when we hold future live chats like this, and from that you'll also be able to get the recordings. So in case people are frantically trying to take notes, I'm trying to read through them very quickly too. It's okay. This recording will come up.
The other one that I mentioned just out over in the chat is Bunker Labs, and it's actually bunkerlabs.org, not .com. Yep. Whoops. So bunkerlabs.org, they're doing really phenomenal things for incubating vetrepreneurs. veteran entrepreneurs. And they're popping up these locations around the country that are basically citywide incubators for veteran-owned businesses. And one thing that I can say is if you're not currently registered to do business with the government and you're a veteran-owned business, the Veterans Administration contracts a majority of their work with veteran-owned businesses and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. I'm trying to do business with the VA, and I'm really happy to say I'm probably not going to be because I'm not a veteran-owned business. I am a woman-owned business, but because I'm not a veteran, they have priority. So if you're a VOB or a SDVOB, you can definitely try to do business with the VA.
For anybody, if we missed any of your questions, we've got maybe about 10 minutes left in the show. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Scrolling through the live chat now, but if you've got anything and you feel we haven't answered, definitely just copy and paste your message again. I probably skipped over it while I was scrolling through all the chats.
Yeah, we're all trying to multitask here and make sure we had some great discussion. And I think that's the great thing about doing these is that certainly the side conversations as well and the connections that you can make during these, not only from what we're talking about here live, but also on the sidebar conversations, because I think you guys can be a huge resource for each other, and that all goes back to that networking that we talked about and how critical that is, and not being afraid to ask for help. Because you just think about yourself personally. If there was another veteran and they ask you for help, you would certainly be willing to do it. I interviewed and Corey had linked me up with Larry Broughton, who is he owns Broughton Hotels and is a very successful former Green Beret, very successful entrepreneur. And he had one example of, if you go to any kind of veteran event and you just walk into a room, you may not know a soul in that room, but the fact that they're all veterans in there, it's almost and I don't know, Byron, and certainly other people out there that have been to these types of events, the connection is almost immediate that you have just because of that shared service, even if it could have been at different times, and people willing to just help if you go out and you're willing to ask for it. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces I've learned, and just being able to connect. That's how I've been able to interview almost 100 different, very extremely successful veteran entrepreneurs, is just by reaching out and just asking for help. And Nick said it there as well. Vets have a built-in level of trust.
Yeah, I think so one thing that this whole live webinar revealed is that there's a ton of help out there, but it can be kind of scattered, and I think that's the most frustrating thing, is that there are all these organizations, but some are great at marketing, some are not. Some of the ones that are great at marketing are now firing their CEOs and replacing some people on the board. So that's the hard thing. We've got some great charities out there and some nonprofits and people like Amanda willing to jump on and help. The problem is usually finding them. So for people asking questions about networking, I think it really comes down to getting specific and breaking down what questions that you have and trying to figure out who can help solve those, answer those questions. Amanda, I actually don't remember how we got connected, but I think somebody introduced us, or if they didn't, I either found you and saw that you were in the veteran space and just sent you an email. Scott, I saw that he had a podcast and I followed him on Twitter and we started chatting there, and that's 2 years later we're still chatting online. So little things like that work out. There's been dozens or hundreds of other people that I've connected with that don't end up going anywhere, and that's okay as well. So there's definitely just a lot of work to put in on the networking side for people asking those questions. Amanda, I don't think I can hear you anymore. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Yeah. You might have to close out and come back in. I had to do that a second ago. Go ahead, Scott.
And just a quick reminder for those, and Byron's got the link out there. If you want to get notified when we do future live webinars like we're doing here today, make sure and get your email on the list there. I've got the link, or Byron just posted the link. Just click that, one click, drop your email address in there, and we're not selling it or anything, just so we can notify you when we do these again.
Yay!
So feel free to
I was speaking
jump over there
about how we connected, and I'm pretty sure it was Justin Constantine.
And I won't. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Oh, actually, before you start, Amanda, I was going to say we're going to start wrapping up, everybody. So any final questions that we missed, write them in now. And while you're doing that, I'll let Amanda tell her story. But also, Amanda, definitely talk about your organization one more time.
Byron, I think we connected because of Justin Constantine, if I'm not mistaken. One of the things, just quick parting thought, is you need to find your circle of influence. And in order to be a successful networker, you need to find that one or maybe two people who are able to connect you with just about anyone that you need to be connected to. And whether that's myself or Byron or Scott or somebody that you know in your network, definitely utilize their relationships that they have with individuals that can help you become successful in your career search. And just a little parting reminder, I am the founder of Miligistix, and we are a military talent consulting firm. And I help companies figure out this whole big world of veterans recruiting. And I help veterans figure out how to connect with the companies that I work with.
Amanda, thanks so much for coming on. Scott just linked, put up your link in the chat there for your company. And on behalf of the audience,
this is really fun. I like
all these questions.
That's a good platform.
Through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're still figuring it out. There's a few small bugs since it's in beta, but I think for this sort of event, I mean, there's nothing else like it to be able to interact with the audience in this way. So I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Where else on social media, LinkedIn, where else would you send?
Sure.
Besides,
so I'm very active on Twitter.
Amanda, should people go
it's just
if they want to
Miligistix.
connect and
So it's
and
what
find
you
out
see
how
here on
they
the
can,
screen. It's just
work
at
with you.
Miligistix on Twitter. And on LinkedIn, you can connect with me. It's just my first name and my last name. You can search me. And that's really where I post all of my activity. And it's the best place to connect with me is through LinkedIn.
Awesome. Scott, I don't have anything else. I don't see any final questions either.
No, I just, again, I would just say, and I'll drop the link in again one more time to jump on our list to get notified when we do these again. So I'll drop that link. So if you're waiting around, go and drop your email in there. We'll let you notify, or we'll get you notified again when we do another one of these. Typically, our pace has been about every 2 weeks on Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So certainly feel free to share everything you've learned here with your peers. Let them know if you got something valuable out of this, and send them to the list as well, so we can certainly grow this audience, help each other. I mean, this is another networking platform, and we're seeing some familiar faces that were on our previous blab. I know Patrick was there last week. We've had Corey and Jennifer have been all of these and have been a great resource. So even jumping on this is in way of a form of networking. So take advantage of it. Send people our way. And, we kind of build that community.
All right, thanks, Scott and Amanda.
You too. Take care, everyone. Have a great night.
Both of you, talk to both of you guys. All right, everybody, have a good one.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining.